The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. Originally published 1844 to 1846. In 1815, the Mediterranean port of Marseille buzzed with the energy of ships coming and going, sailors telling tales of distant shores, and merchants haggling over exotic goods. Against this vibrant backdrop, a young man named Edmond Dantes stepped off the merchant vessel Pharaon with the world at his feet. At 19, he possessed everything a man could want: honest work he loved, the respect of his crew, and most precious of all, the love of Mercedes, the most beautiful woman in all of Catalonia. The promotion to captain seemed inevitable. The previous captain had died during their voyage, and Edmond had brought the ship safely home with skill beyond his years. But as he hurried through the narrow streets of the old quarter, his thoughts weren't on maritime glory. They were on wedding bells and the little house where he and Mercedes would build their life together. Their reunion outside the cathedral was the stuff of fairy tales. Mercedes ran to him with her dark hair streaming like silk in the coastal breeze, and when Edmond swept her into his arms, every passerby smiled at the sight of such pure, uncomplicated joy. Here was love as it should be, young, passionate, and blissfully unaware that the world could be anything but kind to those who deserved happiness. The engagement celebration at the Reserve Inn that evening painted a perfect picture of Mediterranean contentment. Simple wooden tables groaned under platters of fresh bread and local wine, while friends and family gathered to toast the couple's future. Edmond moved through the crowd with natural grace, accepting congratulations with genuine humility. When he spoke of his good fortune, his promotion, his bride, his bright prospects, there wasn't a trace of arrogance in his manner. This was a young man who still believed that virtue would always be rewarded and that honest hearts would always find their happiness. Mercedes, radiant in her traditional Catalan dress, seemed to illuminate the entire terrace. Her laughter rang like silver bells across the harbor, and when she gazed at Edmond, her eyes held the kind of devotion that poets spend lifetimes trying to capture in verse. Every gesture between them spoke of a love so complete, so trusting, that it felt sacred. But even in this scene of perfect joy, shadows lurked. Fernand Mondego sat rigid at one of the tables, his handsome features twisted with barely concealed anguish. His love for Mercedes had turned to poison in his veins, and watching her happiness with another man was slowly driving him mad. Nearby, Danglars, the ship's supercargo, nursed his wounded pride with cheap wine and cheaper thoughts. He had expected the captaincy for himself, and Edmond's promotion felt like a personal insult that demanded redress. Most dangerous of all was Caderousse, the weak-willed innkeeper whose moral cowardice would prove more destructive than outright evil. As the evening wore on, these three men found themselves drawn together by their shared resentment, their whispered conversation growing more heated with each passing hour. When dawn broke over Marseille the next morning, it brought with it the destruction of every dream Edmond had ever harbored. Gendarmes arrived as he was preparing for his wedding, armed with an accusation that would have been laughable if it weren't so devastating. Edmond Dantes, loyal Frenchman, stood accused of carrying treasonous correspondence for the exiled Napoleon Bonaparte. The charge was false, a fabrication born of jealousy and ambition. But in the paranoid atmosphere following Napoleon's return from Elba, mere suspicion was enough to condemn a man. Mercedes' screams as they dragged her beloved away echoed across the harbor, like the cries of a wounded animal, while Edmond's desperate protests of innocence fell on deaf ears. Thus began 14 years of living death in the Château d'If, where hope went to die, and innocence slowly transformed into something harder, more patient, and infinitely more dangerous. The boy who had trusted in justice would emerge from that fortress prison as something else entirely, a man with the patience of Job and the resources to remake the world according to his own sense of justice. What follows is one of literature's greatest adventures, a tale that will take readers from the dungeons of despair to the heights of Parisian society, from the agony of betrayal to the terrible beauty of perfectly orchestrated revenge. Alexandre Dumas has crafted a masterpiece that will grip readers from the first page and refuse to let go until the final, satisfying conclusion. The Count of Monte Cristo awaits. Prepare for a journey that will change how one thinks about justice, mercy, and the true price of vengeance forever.